So strategically, right, when I'm thinking about what is the first thing that I can do to plan out my schedule and calendar, strategically, like I need to figure out what is my perfect week, right? So I'm reading a book right now called Buy Back Your Time. And I've read this concept of the perfect week before, but I stole this idea from when I was like starting my agency back in 2019. It's like you want to map out what your ideal week would look like and what are the necessary buckets of categories of time that you need to put in your week so that you can get closer to your goal and that you're as efficient as possible. So, what is the mistake most people do? Well, most people just kind of just have a blank slate. They have a blank calendar and they're like, okay, I'm going to do this because it feels good here. I'm kind of feeling like making calls right now. I'm going to go do that. Oh, I got an email that just responded. Let me go respond to that real quick. And so you are reactive as opposed to proactive. You are reactive as opposed to proactive. And so why the perfect week is amazing is because you tap into this sweet magic called flow. And flow is achieved by designing your week, not by reacting to it. So let me get some examples, right? One of the things that I used to do when I was a sales rep was like, I wanted to create as much flow as possible. So here's an example of my old perfect week. Monday would be just primarily meetings in the early mornings. So from like 9 to like 12 p.m. was all like internal meetings, got all the admin, got all the planning, got all the meetings out. And then from the rest of that day, I'd go into actually taking sales calls. So Monday was like my planning day. Tuesday was like my big sales call days, right? Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I was focused on production. Like I would just take as many calls as possible, fill up top of pipeline. And generally I'd take anywhere from like 4 to 5 calls on a regular basis, like calls taken. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I was trying to push that a little bit more. So maybe anywhere from like 6 to 7 calls per day, right? And why that's really important is because I'm already in the flow of taking a bunch of sales calls, it allows me to quickly handle objections better, do the pitch smoothly, get really good discovery, right? So Tuesdays and Thursdays were like my big production days. Wednesdays was my follow-up day. So I would take an hour of time, 12 p.m., and block out all my follow-ups from the prior week and this current week. So what it allowed me to do is I got really creative with follow-up. I could send quick videos. I could think of resources. And most importantly, I was just in the flow of my follow-up game. And here's the best part. People would respond Wednesday, Thursday, and I would get them back on the calendar for either, the tail end that last week or early next week, right? So there's a lot of follow-up that came from that. And then last but not least, Friday. Friday was a little bit of a flex day for me. So maybe I might not take as many calls, and I'd either create content. I would either get even more creative with some of the follow-up calls, right? Or maybe there's some catch-up I'd have to do. Or if I was on track, I was already above quota, I would take maybe a half day in sales and just enjoy the beach when I was back in San Diego, get my energy back up, right? So these are all different things of like how I strategically think about it is like block and batch out, like categorize your days in sales, right? And most importantly, like I want to be thinking about where in the week do I have the most energy. So I always knew Mondays I had super low energy, so I wouldn't try to have like that many sales calls on Monday. But I did know Tuesdays and Thursdays I had high energy and I could take as much calls as possible. Wednesdays was like a nice little reset, so I would maybe start my day an hour later and I would sleep in. Because it was midweek, I wanted to rejuvenate my energy to finish the second half of the week strong. So these were all different tactics strategically that I took. And really what I did is I aligned them with my circadian rhythms and how I operate. So this is one thing that's also really important, Matt, that I don't see a lot of people do in sales. Going back to the whole sales athlete thing, I actually took a sleep personality test. And it allowed me to actually identify when I would have my most energy and when my circadian rhythms were. So I'm actually what they call like a bear when it comes to sleeping. So most of my energy, who else is a bear is actually Jeff Bezos. So a lot of people are kind of bought into this like myth that you have to be like an early riser. You got to be a morning person, wake up at 5:30 a.m., go crush it. And like, that's the only way to be successful. if you guys have followed my content for a while, you know that I'm a big proponent of like figuring out your own flow and finding what's in alignment with you. And so I tried the whole early morning riser thing. And what I realized was, to be honest, I didn't really get much done in those early mornings. I ended up just becoming more tired midday. And the truth was like, I couldn't keep it up consistently. So it might have been good for like 1 or 2 days, but there was no consistent winning from that. So when I took this personality test, what I realized is most of my energy is actually between the hours of 10 to 2. So I'm a little bit slower in the mornings, but once 10 a.m. hits and up until right about mid-afternoon, I have an amazing burst of energy. Then I have about a dip for about 2 hours, and then I have a last-minute surge again between like 4 to 6. So knowing that, what did I do? What I did is I would mostly have a lot of like my early morning huddles before 10 because I didn't need to be like super on all the time. And I would have the majority of my sales calls be from 10 to 2, take a break from 2 to 3 o'clock, 3 to 4 would be some admin work because I was still low energy. 4 comes in, I finish out my day with 1 or 2 more sales calls, right? So because I had awareness on my actual circadian rhythm, I was allowing myself to align my energy and my most valuable tasks to be congruent with where my circadian rhythm was. So that's going back to being more strategic about energy management. You can think about it from a day-to-day. You can think about it from a week-to-week, a month-to-month, a quarter. So on top of that, that's like a daily aspect of thinking of things. From there, I think about it from weekly. So I know Mondays, I have really low energy. It starts picking up. And then Fridays, I'm in a really like playful, fun energy. So now, knowing that, I like doing a lot of content writing on Fridays just because that's when I'm like in a good mood. So I do content on Fridays now. And then from like a monthly standpoint, some people are really good at just doing like quick 90-day sprints all in, but then they're like useless for like a week. So that's where they take a vacation, right? Some people, they'll do like 2-week sprints or 4-week sprints. What I personally found through trial and error and through experimentation is I work really well in 6-week sprints. So I do like quick spurts of 6 weeks and then take like 2 weeks where I'm kind of like, 1 week I'm kind of like a mini vacation and like one where I like take off. It's not like I'm not fully off, right? I'm still working, but I'm not like going super intensive. And just by understanding not just my daily, my weekly, but also like my monthly and quarterly rhythms, it's allowed me to do a couple things. It allows me to stay in this game in the long term and really just continue to love it. And most importantly, it allows me to keep my performance as high as possible in an even keel way. So that way I'm not going in and out like high then low. It's like, okay, cool. We're going in a generally positive trajectory. It's consistent. It's sustainable. There's profits and there's peace in my life. So that's why it's important to have those like strategic and tactical aspect of things inside of your calendar for time management and energy management.